Welcome to the dumbest smart guy podcast on the planet. This is the Central Unintelligence Podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to a brand new episode of the Central Unintelligence Podcast. My name is Josh. I'm here today with good buddy Adam.
Greetings.
And this specific episode, I just wanted to talk about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve specifically, because there's been people that have been asking me questions about it, and I'm just like, you know what? Let me just do an episode, and then when some asshole asks me a question, I can just say, hey, go listen to the episode, stupid. Like, don't ask me.
Yeah.
Just do your work. Do your own homework.
It would be nice to know, because you did briefly touch on it last episode about the petroleum reserves of the United States.
Yeah.
Both sweet and sour.
Right.
But it would be nice to know, or go in depth with that, and where we're at currently with not only this U.S.-Iran conflict, but also the card holding of if we're bluffing or not about how bad our own situation is, that we might have to sign this peace agreement so that we don't look like fucking idiots, which we probably are.
Well, I mean, we already look like fucking idiots because we went in there with no plan of accomplishment and didn't fucking do anything. But anyways, I mean, we did some cool shit. We blew up a bunch of shit. Like, I mean, I guess we showed off all the shit we have, but it didn't actually achieve the objective. But anyways, so Strategic Petroleum Reserve. What?
Can you pull up Adobe Audition so I can see like the time?
Oh yeah, there you go.
206.
All right. So Strategic Petroleum Reserve. What is it? Well, it is congressionally mandated, a specific reserve that we hold as a country in oil, and that includes both sweet, light crude oil and heavy sour crude oil. Now, what is the difference between those two? From what I've been told, it's very complicated, but the basic gist of it and what I've researched is it's just dependent upon what comes out of the ground, and it's how easy it is, or how the type of processing of what you can process it into goes. So light sweet is kind of like a different processing method than is heavy sour. So heavy sour, like we use it here in the United States to produce like diesel fuel and aviation fuel. Like that's primarily what we use it for. I mean, we also do produce gasoline out of it, but it's a different process to manufacture heavy sour versus light and sweet. And so we here in the United States primarily now have produced light and sweet crude. So that's basically what we produce. That's why we're a net exporter, because we pull a shit ton of it and we send it all out, because most of our factories, like we talked about in that last episode, we talked about it, most of our refineries here are set up for heavy sour crude. So the Strategic Petroleum Reserve was originally put into play, just for some little context here, back in the 70s during the oil and gas crisis that we had in the United States and pretty much throughout the world. And so ever since then, the International Energy Agency has like said, okay, every country needs to have like some kind of a, reserve or whatever. Each country, it's up to them to decide how much they want to put in it or whatever. And so we in the United States, Congress put together the documentation and the requirements and everything for having a reserve. Now, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is not just like, oh, let's just stash a bunch of barrels in a cave somewhere. Like, that's not how it's stored. And you'll understand kind of like why I'm explaining this part of it later on when we get to the numbers part. But it's stored in what's called a salt cavern. And so what we do is we've dug out these huge caverns underground, and we have essentially lined them with these huge salt deposits. And basically what that does is that provides a barrier so it essentially doesn't leak, right? So the oil, the crude oil that's in there does not leak out and go into, the ground and wherever else. It's like a barrier. And so when you pump it out, you don't actually like pump it. You don't actually like pump it, suck it up out of the ground. You pump water into the bottom of it, and the water pushes the oil up because the crude oil is denser than water, so it sits on top. It's like oil. Like if you had like olive oil or something, right? And you had it in a cup with fucking water, the olive oil will sit on top of the water layer in the thing. And if you were to add more water, the water will just push the oil layer up to the top. So that's essentially like a basic kind of like visual or explanation of how we get the water out. And so, or how we get the oil out of there. And so one of the reasons, or one of the things that is dangerous about it is that if you get to a certain point where there's a certain amount of water more so than oil, then you get to the point where you start doing structural damage and you start doing permanent unfixable damage to the cavern and make it so that it's no longer usable. Now, it's go ahead.
If you don't mind me asking.
Go ahead. Ask all the questions you need, good buddy.
All right. So in that environment, is it possible that like a ground collapse could happen? Because So because it weakens the structure, it weakens the salt. There's like this creep. There's this sludge that is. It basically creates this like sludge with mixing the water with the salt at the bottom, and then like the remnants of the crude oil that sink to the bottom. Mm-hmm. It creates like this sludge, and it like eats away at shit. Mm-hmm. And so when the strategic reserve is full, which the maximum it can be is 750 million barrels or somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. That's what the maximum was. We've been before COVID, it was at like 650 million barrels. It was like damn near almost full. And then since the late 2019s, 2020s, we've been just releasing it like a motherfucker. And now we're down to 46% basically of the full capacity. So, and which states have what, like sweet and sour? Because I've heard Alaska has oil within its like soil or whatever, and Texas obviously has oil within the state itself. But like, which one is which? If you know that information.
Yeah. So the majority of the oil that we were producing here in the United States previously was the heavy sour. Now, we kind of like ran out of oil because we fucking just since the oil revolution, or the need for gasoline and fuels and oil-based products like plastics and all that shit. I mean, people don't realize like that a barrel of oil, a barrel of crude oil doesn't just make gasoline and fuels. It makes a ton of shit. I mean, petroleum is essentially utilized in almost every product that we fucking use today. I mean, it's in the computer that we're using. These microphones, they're made from a petroleum product. Like everything, crude oil and petroleum touches fucking everything. So, but we mined we oiled and drilled the shit out of it, and we fucking sucked as much as we could out of the heavy stuff. And so that's why they invented fracking. During the late 90s, early 2000s, there was what they called a shale revolution, was because we were not able to get in between the layers of shale that we have here. We sucked out all the big major things, but there's a shit ton of oil that's in these like little pockets that we couldn't get out. Well, that's why they invented fracking. Fracking unlocked us to be able to get at those levels of crude that's there. But that type of crude oil in there is just that, it's that light, sweet crude that's in the fracking, zones or whatever. And I don't know what the number is, but I've read stuff that it's like, there's just almost an unlimited supply of it. Like we have like so much of that shit. But the problem being the majority of all of our factories or refineries are tooled to do that heavy sour stuff. So that's why we import all the shit that we use, and we refine it here, and do it ourselves. We just import it and refine it.
There is a question I want to ask, but I'm not sure where it'll fit in, because what I understand is obviously, yes, like petroleum affects every product. If it's gasoline that's created or whatever, that just trickles into everything, from like the logistics of moving one product to another part of a country or from overseas or whatever. I get all that, but how does electricity, like when we purchase electricity from Canada or we produce electricity ourselves, where the fuck does oil come in to where that price is inflated? Like with SoCal Edison, like how the fuck does petroleum affect the price of electricity?
Yeah, so one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that most of your main electrical generating plants, if it's not nuclear, or some sort of like hydroelectric or solar or whatever, they run on diesel generators. Like they run on fuel. That's how they make the electricity. It's run on gasoline. I don't know exactly what the percentages of which ones run on gas and which ones run on diesel. The majority of them, to my understanding, run on diesel. There are some that run on gas generators for the most part that they create and make the electricity, but the majority of that stuff is just run on just these giant diesel generators that are just pumping out massive amounts of power.
Oh.
And that's kind of where it comes into play. And there are alternative means and methods that we've kind of gone to, but that's sort of where it starts to hit us about, oh yeah, all of a sudden it just costs more to make electricity. Well, yeah, it's because how the fuck are they making that electricity? They're making it with diesel fuel.
Yeah, I felt like I was under the assumption that hydroelectric dams were kind of like the thing that were prominent across the United States. Therefore, most of our electricity. But then the demand goes up because obviously the more of a population a country has, the demand for electricity goes up. So therefore, what is already a fixed amount of electricity created by hydroelectric dams, the demand is greater than what is being able to produce. So there maybe petroleum is, or what were you saying, diesel powering generators to create electricity is how that comes into play. But anyways, you can go.
So
I digress.
It's basic regular petroleum and then also natural gas. So natural gas is another thing that LNG, like the liquefied natural gas or whatever. Yeah. That's another way that they create it. It's not just necessarily all, but that's a petroleum product, I guess.
Yeah.
Technically. So basically 75% or 3/4 of the U.S. power grid is powered and reliant upon fossil fuel type.
Oh, things. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so I was just looking up the percentages because I wanted to know renewables like solar and wind, 9%.
Yeah.
Nuclear power, 9%. Coal, 8%. The rest of it is 38 in straight diesel fuel and then 36 in natural gas. So 75-ish% is just straight up, or 70% is just straight up petroleum products. So when these prices spike and it's expensive, that's what makes it expensive for us here as the consumer. And now we've got this point too, and this kind of ties in somewhat to data centers now using more electricity. That's also making the price go up because they don't have the ability to just all of a sudden pull money out of the air. It's funny, they say the U.S. can't print barrels of oil. You can't print petroleum. We can just print more money, but that's one thing that you can't print. You can't print more oil. It's just not possible. So when there's a shortage or there's not enough or we don't have the right type to refine here, that makes all this shit happen.
Okay, so then let's say for the scenario with this whole U.S. and Iran conflict, right?
Yeah.
What was the petroleum that they export? Is it the sour?
So out of the Strait of Hormuz, the majority of it that comes out of there, it's a lot of liquid LNG, liquefied natural gas, and it's also heavy sour, which is what we need. We use here. We import that to turn into aviation fuel, diesel fuel. Okay,
so then when something like that, like the price of that product to be traded or purchased and imported into the United States, that affects the price. Even the conversation or the event itself, or not even the event itself, the news, if there's speculation that there is going to be a skirmish or a battle between two countries, and it's not necessarily that the price of oil immediately goes up because of that actual event happening, but if the news got out that there's fear of that battle actually happening, that affects every other product, even though it's not directly related to the sour product.
Right, yeah, it does.
So sweet would be affected by that, even though it has no tangent, or it doesn't have any technically direct correlation to it. It's separate, but just even the news or speculation that a battle is happening would affect its price.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, yes. And see, this is where we get into the hard shit with the stock market, and right now it being disconnected essentially from reality with the way that they're. And I'm going to show you this chart right now. It's called the 3-2-1 crack spread. And basically what this is the 3-2-1 crack spread is essentially it takes for every 3 barrels of oil of crude oil that you purchase, you can make 2 barrels of gasoline and 1 barrel of diesel. All right, that's what you can refine those into. So this kind of tells us when you look at all these plots and everything, and it's done by year and the price, this is like what it is now. But if you come over and you follow the curve, this is the curvature of the price in the middle. If you come over here and then you pop it down here, this is likely what they're actually paying at the refineries for a barrel of oil, which is just under 120, right in between.
From Iran to the U.S.
On the open market of physical barrels of oil. This is likely what the oil companies and the gas companies are paying for this to refine this barrel of oil, because right now it's trading on the market at, whatever, 50 something or 60 or $70 a barrel, right? They're likely paying, and this is just kind of like a theory, because they're not saying what they're paying. And one of the things that if we look at like what Trump has said, hey, oil companies, stop price gouging everybody. And the oil companies look at that and go, yeah, we can't fucking do that, because what they're paying for a physical barrel of oil is not what is being traded in the stock market for what the futures of the oil is being traded at. They're paying like a huge fucking premium. So they're paying almost $120 a barrel basically for oil at because again, this chart represents and says that either the oil companies are completely fucking screwing us, and they're paying this $60 a barrel, and they're just, or whatever it is, the price is on the thing, and they're just saying, fuck everybody, we're going to take our profits when we can. But because they're like, hey, when Trump threatens to like send the Department of Justice after you for doing shit, and they go, sorry, man, there's nothing we can do. Yeah, that's because their margins probably aren't that great, because they're paying more than what is being shown through the stock market.
All right, so then what would be the play in the president saying, we've got a memorandum of understanding, right? Mm-hmm. If that's what the thing is called, to start the process of negotiating a peace deal, right? So that would tranquilize the markets, and everybody would be like, okay, things are calming down. We can buy barrels of oil for like $90 or whatever.
Yeah.
And then that would afford I guess oil companies to purchase those barrels of oil or whatever at a lower price, but then to say, oh, we're going to nuke Iran and we're going to blow the shit out of them, that would immediately spike the price and inflate it, because it's like, oh, then we have potential scarcity that may exist, and that would in essence create profit for the people that purchased oil or did oil trades. They got in at a good price, and then they sell and get the profits of it. So like, a little bit of like market manipulation, I suppose.
Yeah, no, that's exactly kind of what's happening. And then if you look at the market, because the market is not trading physical barrels of oil, they're trading like contracts on oil. So like, if you get fucked if like you bought it low, or you bought it low, and then you have to produce these contracts at that price, and the price is like lower than what you bought it at. Yeah. Then you get fucked, because now you got to put in your own money to like make up the difference.
Right.
So, but basically, what is happening is, like you said, it's market manipulation in the stock market, because they can't manipulate the physical cost of the barrel of oil. Like they can't do it. Mm-hmm. So, essentially, wait, hold on just a second. All right. So anyways, they're basically, they can't manipulate the price of the barrel of oil that they're paying for. Like when they're going to sell, when the ship gets off the line and gets to its destination and say, okay, we're selling you this fucking barrel of oil, they can't manipulate that price. Like the market price is the price that it's going for. And it's like, well, shit, if that's what people are paying, that you can't be like, oh, well, it's trading on the stock market at $60 a barrel. No, that's not how that shit works. So everyone, and again, that's why the announcements, and in my opinion, there's very clear evidence that Trump was essentially just manipulating the market by saying what he was saying when he was saying it, and doing what he was doing. I think he got lucky with Iran deciding, hey, fuck it, let's just go ahead and sign this deal for now, this MOU, to like maybe start talking. And then he's obviously played that up to the extent that hopefully this will continue. But anyways, so with the back to the petroleum reserve, right now, we have only about 325 million barrels left in it. Now, the drawdown maximum that we can get to, no one knows what it is, it's not publicized, but science and smart people that are much smarter than I have kind of put together that the low ceiling is probably 150 to 160 million barrels in the reserve. So like once you get below that, now you're starting to do damage where you're not going to be able to use it anymore.
So is it like the situation with an aquifer where it naturally replenishes itself at some point, but you have to let it get to that point? But if you do it under a certain threshold, that it's not gonna, or even like the Lake Mead, how the Hoover Dam, like once it gets a certain level, the water will no longer go over. Like is that kind of like a similar situation with the oil reserve?
Kind of, except it's more of a structural thing as opposed to it doesn't refill on its own. Like we have to manually refill it. And this is another thing. If you look at this again, this proves, I think, this doesn't prove, but it's further evidence that the theory that I'm postulating with the 3-2-1 crack spread and the pricing is the fact that over the last 4 months, oil has been the lowest it's ever been, and we have not fucking purchased any at all. It's zero. We've purchased none to begin refilling. So essentially, we're basically kind of like getting to the point where we've only got, in terms of like out of that 150, and this is the other thing, we don't know what is what. We don't know what the threshold is for the sour, and we don't know what it is for the sweet. So we know the total threshold is around 150, probably is the bottom. So we've got 319. So that's what 100 and, well, wait, if you're going by, it's like 150, wait. So 150 to 250 would be 100. So it's like 170 barrels, 170 million barrels of oil is what we have before we get to that like threshold bottom. But again, out of that 170 million, we don't know what the floor is for these things. For sour having 202 and sweet having 116.
Okay, what about if this whole play with Venezuela, right? What kind of crude oil do they have?
So they have sour heavy, which is what we use, right?
Okay.
The problem with Venezuela is they do not have the oil refining or manufacturing capability to pull that out of the ground at a rate that can fucking help us.
But would the U.S. taking that over and this number not going up, like if we were purchasing, if that number went up on this chart and it said we were purchasing like what is this number?
That's the return. That's the return of what we're putting in. That's the number that we're putting in.
Oh, I see.
This number over here is the drawdown, and then this is the net movement of based on what we're buying versus what we're drawing down.
Okay, so I guess what I was gonna get at is that if it would create panic, if that like one of these numbers went up, like now that I don't know how it looks like that I don't know if we're seizing the operations of Venezuela. Like how could we haven't had alleviation? Like I get what you're saying. Like, how come the price of gasoline hasn't gone down if supposedly we were seizing these operations? Like, how come that hasn't come up towards us?
Right. Because as it turns out, Venezuela wasn't really able to fucking produce reliably that much crude oil.
Okay.
They're not able to pull it out of the ground. Venezuela is a third world country. Let's not like fucking bullshit around that fact.
Yeah.
They're a shitty third world country. Now, the fact that we went in and kidnapped their president and basically told the vice president who became the president, hey, you work for us now, bitch.
Yeah.
Like, that's basically what we did. And said, you're going to give us all your fucking oil. Yeah, they did. There was only one oil company that was willing to go back down there, and it was Chevron. And they went down there and basically said, yeah, this shit's all fucked. Like, and they're already kind of saying, like, yeah, we don't really want to get involved because this is going to cost more money than we're going to get out of it. Because if the U.S. is intent upon just fucking taking all this oil from them, Chevron ain't gonna make no money on it. So like they need to come down and do all these. They need to fix all this infrastructure. They need to put in more infrastructure. And this is partially why our operation in Venezuela wasn't to, I don't think, give us the benefit of utilizing it. It was to deny that benefit to the Russians and the Chinese, because the Russians and the Chinese were in the country actively scouting and beginning to prepare for reindustrializing the oil industry in Venezuela. They were going to be putting in all new infrastructure. They were going to be rehabbing all the infrastructure that was currently there. And that was the deal, was Venezuela, the Chinese were going to do it all for free. The Venezuelans were going to pay them back in crude oil. And so that was kind of the deal. Now that we basically took over, okay, we denied that strategic asset to the Chinese, which is why we did that operation. So it makes sense why we did Venezuela. This thing with Iran doesn't make sense as to why we're doing it, because of the fact that now our strategic petroleum reserve, we're having to, and this is the thing, we don't have to draw it down. We don't need to fucking suppress the markets. We don't need to fucking suppress the price of oil, because even though we're technically dumping all this oil and suppressing the price of the market traded barrel of oil, it's not really helping at the gas pump. I mean, gas is still expensive. I mean, I think right now we're seeing a sort of, slowdown on demand. And I think that, yeah, we've pumped it a little bit into the market. So like, okay, cool. They're refining it. They're kind of like doing stuff. So the price has gone down at the gas pump a little bit.
Yeah, like 30 cents.
Right. But nothing too crazy. So what is the purpose of us continuing with this bullshit? Because if we don't finish this and just get the Strait of Hormuz open, this is going to drag on, and that's what the Iranians are counting on. They're counting on this dragging on and us draining our reserve to the point where we say, all right, fine, we're just going to leave. Fuck it. Charge your fees, do whatever you want to do, we're out. But the problem with that being, Trump already has talked so much shit about not charging fees and all this bullshit, he can't just walk away and let him do that. He's just not going to do it. So when we get into this strategic petroleum reserve actually running itself down, supposedly once it gets to that 150, 160 level, there needs to be congressional approval to continue draining it. Like Congress has to say, yeah, you can do it, and continue draining it. That's supposed to be the trigger. Now, here's the other thing. These numbers could be bullshit. This is the government reporting this shit. So they could be lying because this is the public information, and they don't probably want the Iranians to know how much we're fucking draining of this stuff. So the numbers that we're seeing on the public side probably aren't right. They're not good. They're not as bad as they could be, but they're definitely not good numbers.
So it could be the situation's far worse.
It could be that we just don't know. We could be much lower in this reserve, and that could be when Trump said that shit at the NATO summit or G5 or whatever the fuck that was the other week, and he said that we had 4 weeks left in the strategic, or we had 4 weeks left before we were out of oil. I think that he fucking slipped up and said that Trump says a lot of weird shit and says shit like crazy, but sometimes he actually just says what's on his mind. And I think that was a real thing that he just let out of, like, oh yeah, we were like about 4 weeks away from fucking having no oil. And, or running out of oil. And then essentially or running out of fuel. And that's where we get to the point of like, okay, when we run out of fuel, what happens then? Well, we can look back into history and see what happened. What happened in the 70s when we had this original crisis? There was fuel rationing. What's happening now in Russia? There's fuel rationing. And this is another thing that, as related to this, a lot of people are not taking into account. This Russian-Ukraine war is putting pressure on this, because as the Ukrainians are continuing to attack infrastructure within Russia, and they're essentially taking out the majority of their oil refining capacity. And the Russians right now there are certain parts of Russia where you just can't get fuel. Like there's no gas.
That shit's crazy, dude, that there's like this parallel situation where you have Western nations pushing for Ukraine to remain a sovereign nation and potentially be a strategic ally in NATO. And the same situation is happening with Iran, who is not they're a prospective member for BRICS, and you have the U.S. attacking them in like kind of a same scenario as Ukraine, although it's a economic strategic alliance, whereas the other one is more like military. But it's still like it's different reasons, but a similar situation that's happening. So like maybe the U.S. is attacking Iran too, to potentially make Iran too volatile to include them within the BRICS economic alliance.
Yeah, I mean, that very well could be. As we'll talk about in the next episode, the shit that's been going on over there with why I think that this whole thing's about to all just blow up anyways. But the bottom line is that we aren't out of the woods, even if there are some boats coming out of fucking the Strait of Hormuz with oil. They're not coming here. They're going to Asia. They're going to China. The ones that are actually getting out that are oil-laden ships, they're not coming here. And we'll talk about it in the next episode. But I mean, just today, the Iranians launched missiles and struck 2 more ships on the Omani side of the strait. So 2.
Well, I have 2 things to bring up.
Oh shit! All right, go ahead.
So, if this thing were to actually play out in a favorable way or mutually beneficial way, and it's been reported that Iran at this point has a surplus of oil that they can flood the market with and probably make it so that they're more affordable. But when would we start feeling the effects where they could potentially say, we're not gonna, like, we're only gonna trickle out this oil and inflate the price and really put the hurt on the US or just in general. But then you also have the other thing too is, like, China has also, I think you have mentioned it, that they pivoted away from petroleum altogether.
Yeah,
or not altogether,
they've
but
reduced
like
their demand by a
nearly
lot.
by 50 or like nearly
like 40,
50%.
like it's like 40 something percent.
40%, right? So they've already pivoted to renewable energies to insulate themselves from a situation exactly like this. So I know that's 2 different things, but if you wanted to comment on either one of those things or both real quickly, I don't know.
Yeah, so technically we really haven't even felt the Strait of Hormuz, this Iran shit yet.
Yeah.
All the original people that were talking about this when it first happened were saying, yeah, we're good probably until about the 4th of July weekend. And if some shit kind of, plays out favorably, we may not really be hitting that high level of gas prices until sometime between in July, middle of July, and all the way possibly close to September is when we are going to start to really feel the effects of this if nothing happens.
Yeah, I texted you. I'm like, dude, I bought shit from Amazon for 6 weeks ago. It was $4 cheaper.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, are products across the board accounting for, like, pricing in this thing getting worse, or is it only the beginning?
No, the price increases we're seeing now are to kind of like get in line with the increased cost of the inputs now because of the price of the fuel and everything's going up, right? It's been elevated. This is them kind of catching up to say, oh shit, okay, everything's got to go up a little bit. Once we get to where, again, they're saying, like, in most of the low-end places of the country, gas is what, like $3 or $4 a gallon?
Yeah.
Or $3 or something like that. Not California, because we fucking get hit with all these taxes, so we're paying over $5 almost.
Yeah.
But we will see $9 or $10 a gallon of gasoline here in California probably in fucking August. And if this plays out, we'll probably be seeing across the rest of the country hitting that sometime maybe in September. Is what I'm really like. I'm seriously thinking unless there's just some catastrophic fucking blow up shit that happens, and either we open the strait completely by essentially, the only way I see that happening is if we just nuke Iran. That's the only way we fucking get this done, is to just nuke the whole country and say fuck it and be done with it. Hey, everyone can come through the strait now. That's kind of where the only option I see of that happening. Or we just completely capitulate and say, go fuck yourself, we're leaving. Do what you want. And then to engage in commerce, the companies and the shipping companies, they will pay the $2 million fee or whatever. Like, they will pay the fees because that'll just be a permanent increase on the cost of the good. It'll still be cheaper than what we're paying now, but it'll be more expensive than what it was before. And then the second thing, what were you saying? It was the second thing about the Chinese with the...
Yeah, like, they basically insulated themselves from this whole situation. It's like, if we were to curb this whole thing, it's like whatever initiatives existed for renewable energies that were put in place 4 or 8 or 10, 20 years ago, like, that's all been cast to the wayside. And now it's been said that, like, the only alternative that we can really go to is coal. And that's,
Yeah, and I think that the Chinese really do have a huge coal industry. A lot of their stuff runs on coal. It's dirtier.
Yeah.
But they're not reliant upon petroleum.
Yeah.
Like they're not reliant upon crude oil. And yes, the Chinese play the long game. They're a long civilization, and they just play the long game, and they think of things 30 and 40 and 50 years ahead of time. And they started doing this shit 20 years ago. And 25 years ago, they started putting in the infrastructure for solar, for wind power, for switching everything, going to coal as their main combustible type of energy producing resource. And everybody in Europe and all the other places, oh no, it's dirty, we don't want this, blah blah blah. Well, they're like, cool, we don't need your oil, go fuck yourself. We're good. We got all this coal, we got all this power of wind and fucking solar shit, and they have the ability. So I think this is just what they thought was. They inevitably saw that this shit was going to happen, and the Middle East was going to be a problem. Yeah. And it doesn't take a fucking rocket scientist to see that. You just read in your history books. The Middle East has always been a fucking problem. The fact that over the last 150 years or however long it was been since they fucking discovered all this oil there, that was always going to eventually become a problem and a flashpoint in the world that, hey, everyone's relying upon this major producer of this shit. What happens when they all start fighting each other again and really fucking shit goes off the rails? Because that's the history of that region, is the shit just goes off the rails. And right now we're witnessing it. We're kind of seeing it happen. We're seeing it play out live. So, anyways, all right. I think that was everything I had on this, because other shit we can talk about in the episode. But yeah, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, we're fucked. All right, we're just fucked. That's the end of the episode. We're just fucked. All right, just prepare to be fucked and just to never be driving again. I hope you like walking. Fucking, because we're just fucked. It's all over. That was the latest episode of the Central Unintelligence Podcast. Don't forget, subscribe and like on Instagram and TikTok at Game Rage Magazine. We're also on Twitter/X at Game Rage Mag. Also our website, www.GameRageMagazine.com.